Good afternoon from Duhallow. My name is Maura Walsh and I want to talk this afternoon about the afterlife as we have experienced it in IRD Duhallow. So IRD Duhallow is a community-based local development company. We were established in 1989, so we are just over 30 years in existence. Now, our model of sustainable rural development has 4 pillars and has had 4 pillars, I think, from within 2 years of setting up. Started off with an economic focus, but now has social, cultural, economic and environment development, 4 equal pillars. Our environment working group has membership drawn from academics, from the community, experts from the statutory agencies, and it advises the board and promotes economic and environment projects in the area as well. We have 4 successful leader programs under our belt, and at that stage we were focused on our environment. So we got support from inland fisheries. We had Susan Campion was on our board, so luckily we had a good strong link there. And with their help, we made a successful application for an EU live environment programme entitled SAM-OK, which was the salmon and mussels, otter and kingfisher. And this project was focused on the River Allow catchment in northwest Cork. We engaged a project scientist, Dr. Fran Igo, and enlisted the support of our Rural Social Scheme, which is a scheme operated through the Department of Social Welfare, and it is targeted at small farmers, low-income farmers, and they work 19.5 hours for the community in return for a top-up on their payment. So that's how we set about our project. So what did we find? Our main problems were cattle access, bank erosion, siltation, which altogether, with maybe a few other pressures, were degrading the habitat of the freshwater pearl mussel. So you will see here on the screen, we had severe bank erosion, and this was leading to very high levels of siltation. Now, there were particular pressure points. Some areas weren't as bad as others. Our second problem was that the banks in many areas were absolutely invaded and thick with either Japanese knotweed or Himalayan balsam, mainly Himalayan balsam, I might add. So our Rural Social Scheme by hand removed every bit of that Japanese knotweed, removed the Himalayan balsam, and we treated the Japanese knotweed. And we had a very fast recovery, as you'll see down on the right-hand side. Within 2 years, you had all the, what we would call fellostrums down here, wild irises, I think everywhere else in the country. But we had a very good regrowth of the natural vegetation, which stabilised the banks over the river months. So what we did to sort out this problem. Again, I'll take you through the photographs. On the top left, bank revetment. That was essential. Now, we hadn't that much problem in getting buy-in from the landowners because they could see themselves the speed at which their land was being taken by the river. So, you know, in many cases, it was just us, our Fran, or our community reps going out and explaining what we were doing and the benefits that would accrue from it. So again, this was, you know, all done by hand. We got native cuttings of willow, native trees, and planted every bit of the banks where there were issues. The next issue was to get the cattle out of the river, and the cows. We would have both cattle and dairying. So we had to put in solar-powered cattle pumps so that the cattle would still have access to water, but would be denied access to the river. The other issue then we had, of course, moving across the top, is that, you know, these rivers are subject to flooding a couple of times a year. And if the fences are in, the flood comes, the fence is gone, and you're back to square one, the cattle are back in the river. So we had to devise what we call a flood-friendly fencing method. And if you look at the top right, there are 2 photographs there, one showing it in close detail with the blue insulator, the other one showing what happened after the flood. So basically, we put in a circlip, the wire goes through that, its tension is good and tight, so that if a cow or an animal, you know, brushes against it, it won't yield. But if there's sustained pressure like you would have in a flood, the wire comes off, the pole stays, and the circlip stays. So it's very easy when the flood abates to put back on your electric wire or your fence wire again. They're devised with the solar-powered cattle pumps, and we would have done several demonstrations on those with other farmers along the way. We fenced over 38 kilometres of riverbank with good success. The other work we did then was we looked at, the habitats for the other species, the kingfisher, the otter. We came across dippers on our way as well, and sand martins that we didn't realise we had. But I suppose before we leave the land part of it, the other big issue then was the siltation coming from land drains and small tributaries down into the main channel. So the science team came up with innovative silt traps, which combined using old Christmas trees that would, slow the flow of the water, and then the debris would drop. And we actually dug out, you'll see the Honourable Dr. Fran Igo wasn't just in the lab all the time. He was out on the ground with his shovel as well with the lads. And they dug in, a base, put in, those big bags that every farmer has, that they get delivery of their feedstuffs or whatever in. Those bags have loops on the top, so we were able to put them into the frame. They stayed in the river. The silt hit the tree, dropped in, and then he could very easily put in the forks of his loader, lift out, take it to a safe part of the field, and empty out the silt again. So that has been still working, and works in the afterlife. So we put in otter holes right throughout, various shapes and sizes, all working well. We also found a colony of sand martins, and with the erosion, their whole nesting sites were getting totally washed away every year. So again, with our supervisor on the RSS and 2 scheme, we devised a sand martin, a fake sand martin colony. We called it our Nama apartment. So this big apartment block of sand martins got fixed in, and now didn't get inhabited the first year, but has been inhabited since. So that has been a success. We also put in the kingfisher nests, and again, they were made in-house by our own RSS workers. And the dipper nest box, which is the one down on the bottom right, they were put up under the bridges where they would be used and have most use. So that in a nutshell is the most of what we did. So having finished our life programme, we were still doing the afterlife work. We were still walking the banks to make sure that there was no stray knotweed that we needed to still treat, or any regrowths of Himalayan balsam, which we would pull and take out. We were supporting the farmers to make sure they were emptying their silt traps, make sure that the fencing remained, and that the pumps, the solar pumps for the animals, were still working, to make sure that the animals were staying out of the river. But we thought, there must be some way that these farmers could take ownership and start doing this work, for themselves. So we got to hear of the EIP, the European Innovation Partnership Agri Programme, and we decided, with the great support that we got from best experienced people in water quality, agri and environment expertise that we could find, to actually put in an application. And the idea was that we would improve the water quality. We did have some pristine rivers, we had some that were under pressure, and within the catchment. So the idea is that we would get all of this catchment area up to blue dot status. So who were our experts? We had Dr. Mary Kelly Quinn from UCD, Donald Daly from the EPA at the time, Karen Daly of Tagask, PJ Phelan, an independent agriculture consultant that had worked with us on the LIFE programme, Donald Grant from the Department of Housing and Local Government. We had Dr. Alan Mee and Dr. Jaden Reedy. They were our ecologists that had worked or will be working on our next LIFE project. And of course, Dr. Fran Igo, who had now at this stage gone to work with LawPro. So they guided our application, and we based it a bit, I suppose, on what we had done in the big programs like LIFE and LEADER in the past. And we were granted 1.4 million to directly, I suppose, engage with and achieve blue dot status on the Allo, Dallow and Onana rivers. What are we doing kind of differently? I suppose we have our project scientist as part-time, but we have a full-time farm planner, Michael Morrissey, and he must prepare a farm plan with each farmer. Each farmer has to select at least 2 measures from nutrient management, biodiversity, buffers, and I suppose a core requirement is taking part in the knowledge transfer and training. Now, we had about 40 farmers engaged in our LIFE programme. At the moment, we are over 80 on the EIP, and we are aiming to tip the 100 if we can. It's very ambitious, but we still think we can do that. Now, our participants are selected on the points they score for environmental value per measure, and there is a subsequent ranking process then in place. So we've completed a nutrient management plan with valid soil samples with each farmer. That's another basic for being admitted to the programme. The payment validation is done annually, and it's based on the individual measure scorecards. And participation in the programme, of course, is entirely voluntary, but we have got very good buy-in and expect to achieve our targets. So our IRD Duhallow EIP Agri, it's a results-based payment model. So our nutrient management measures, we have the vegetated in-drain buffer swales, we have low-emission slurry spreading, we have cattle water pumps, creating and retention of ponds and wetlands. That's something new that we hadn't done in the previous life. Farm track mitigation, and then the buffer measures. They consist of the watercourse fencing, hedgerow planting, tree and shrub planting, invasive species control, and riparian alluvial woodlands, and strategic topped grazed buffer strip. And the big last one in there, of course, the big one is the bank erosion mitigation. So on our biodiversity measures, we have the high nature value grassland retention. That's an important one, we believe, for the type of soil that we have in this area. We have the wet grassland retention as well, grass buffer strips, the fauna, I suppose the otter holes, we want to continue that work, that's important. The birds, the dipper boxes, the San Martin sandbanks, the kingfisher nest boxes, we want to continue with those. And then the last bit, which is the big one for us, is the knowledge transfer and training, because we firmly believe that until the knowledge and the ownership is with the local landowners and that they own it, it's not going to go far. Once the programme finishes, it would finish too. But if the knowledge transfer and the training and the belief is within the farmers themselves, it will continue. So we're looking at the contractors are as important as the farmers, because sometimes some of the damage is done by those who are contracted and coming in on site. Farm plan design and implementation, of course, is important that knowledge is shared as well. Ecosystem services, that people realise that what they're doing isn't just benefiting the farm and benefiting their own animals, that it's feeding into a whole ecosystem. And then finally, we're looking at what our model is, how this all ties up. So I'm going to start, I suppose, by saying we're, a community-based bottom-up approach. That's where we come from. That is our core belief. And we believe that it works with environment projects just as well as in local development. Our experience has been that community-based bottom-up has been very well widely accepted in general rural development and indeed in local development as well. But when it comes to environment projects, you still get a good bit of, the experts know best, and, don't be asking us what we're doing, we know best, and, you're amateurs, so stay out of this realm. We don't think that is the right approach. We think that development without local community involvement and local ownership is one of what I call the 7 deadly sins of development. We believe that people will take pride in, will take ownership of, and they will protect and defend what they know and what they value. Communities must be informed of and trained in the uniqueness of their environment assets. Water that isn't clean enough for freshwater pearl mussels is surely not clean enough to flow through your farm, through our villages, through our parks, and through our towns. And we believe that the blue flag and blue dot statuses must be continuously strived for. So our model here on the right is a very basic model, but I think there are some lessons that maybe other projects could pick up from, and we're always willing to change ourselves, but this is where we're at. Through LIFE, EIP and LEADER, we've achieved an innovative bottom-up environment work guided by scientists at local level. And that is hugely important. And the most important thing there is that they will monitor and we will have proper data that we can go forward on. The second one, step 2, wide consultation with landowners to achieve community buy-in. And I think the difficulty there often is that consultation is considered an advertisement that one can place in a local paper or put up on the website and ask people to submit their observations. That doesn't happen. That's just a fig leaf. It's important to go and meet people where they are, whether it's in their community halls, at their farm gate, at their mint shed, at their women's meetings. Go out and meet people and talk to them and listen. Step 3, dissemination of results and the benefits for the projects. Very important to give feedback on a regular basis to communities and to landowners so that they know that what they are doing is making a difference, or maybe it isn't, but they need to know, and we need to listen to them and hear what they're saying. Step 4, encouraging and supporting citizen science. We really believe that this is important. In the past, people had far more knowledge, in-depth knowledge of their local areas, each individual field, each boreheen, each plant. I think we've lost that to a certain extent. And I think it's important that it's encouraged and supported, not just for farmers and landowners, but for the general rural population as well. And indeed, the urban populations where a lot of our water courses run through. And it's important that we acknowledge their knowledge and their growth in knowledge. Step 5, community and landowner ownership of their environment assets. And I can't stress this enough because we believe this is what will give us long-term protection of our environment and development of our environment. Cleaner rivers, cleaner streams, cleaner drains. And I think once people own something, when I hear people talking about our river, our lake, our mountains, I know then that they value those, that they have taken ownership of them and they will protect them. So thank you very much indeed for your attendance and your tuning in. I'll just throw up on the screen there where you can contact us if you have any questions or any information you need. And I'd be delighted if you use the app to put any questions up and we will take them when the time comes. Thank you very, very much for being with us.